Welcome to the Titan Tar channel. Today we have a topic to discuss about Ukraine fortifying lines behind Pokrovsk to face the Russian threat. Don't miss the chance to join us and share your opinions with us. Become a member of our channel and evolve your rank. The Ukrainian army is in a race against time to build new defense lines beyond Pokrovsk in order to prevent the advance of Russian troops towards the Dnieper River. Ukrainian media sources, based on open-source intelligence analysis, report that the construction of these fortifications is being carried out urgently. However, experts have doubts about the effectiveness of these defenses. Many believe that the lack of time and financial resources will make it impossible to create structures comparable to the Russian fortifications in the Zaporizhzhia region. According to Ukrainian reports, the money earmarked for the construction of these defense lines has already been embezzled or stolen, further compromising defense efforts. International experts are also observing the progress of this construction. A French analyst noted that the Ukrainian Armed Forces clearly intend to block Russia's access to the Dnieper and, consequently, to the entire surrounding region. He reported on social media that Ukrainian engineering troops have already begun building fortifications beyond Pokrovsk, as well as erecting them towards the Dnieper. At the same time, Ukrainian military personnel in the Pokrovsk region expressed concern about the lack of reserves and the ability to resist the Russian advance. According to sources associated with the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, many soldiers believe that Pokrovsk will not be able to hold out for long, and some even suggest that the Kyiv leadership is deliberately abandoning Donbass due to a lack of resources to adequately defend it. The situation in Donbass is considered critical, especially in the so-called Battle of Nevelsky in the Kurakovsky direction. According to Ukrainian sources, the armed forces are planning a phased withdrawal to avoid encirclement, but this withdrawal may not happen in time, as no official order has been issued so far. The situation is alarming, as Russian forces manage to encircle Ukrainian troops in a semicircle north of Kurakovo, and a repetition of previous mistakes, such as the one that occurred at Ugledar, is feared. At that time, the order to withdraw came too late for the Ukrainian 72nd Brigade, which resulted in heavy losses. Ukrainian resources point out that if the Russian advance continues, two sieges may form in the Kurakovo region. The first, smaller scale, would close if Russian forces capture Gornyak and Kurakovka. The second, much larger one, could occur with the capture of Kurakovo, encircling a large Ukrainian force. Despite this, the Ukrainian command is hesitant to order a retreat, believing that it is possible to hold out until the natural thawing of the terrain slows down the Russian advance, which would allow time to gain strength in Pokrovsk for defense. Pressure on the Ukrainian army is increasing as the Russians consolidate a pocket north of Kurakovo. After the fall of Ugledar, the Russians intensified attacks from the south, forcing the Ukrainian army to prepare for a gradual withdrawal. According to the Ukrainian commander, the main task at the moment is to delay the Russian advance until the thaw, which can help contain the enemy and ensure the defense of Pokrovsk. While the outcome of the situation remains uncertain, there are signs that reserves earmarked for reinforcement in this area will be minimal. Zelensky, for his part, faces pressure to maintain control of the Kursk region, which limits his strategic options. The Russian army's recent successes on the battlefield have put the West in a delicate position, according to a British expert. Moscow has made it clear that it will not accept a resolution of the conflict on Kiev's terms, forcing the West to choose between escalating the conflict with the risk of nuclear war or capitulating to Russia. Russia is showing determination in seeking an end to the conflict with concrete victories, while Kiev, beyond rhetoric about reclaiming the 1991 borders, has not offered any viable solutions. The West, for its part, seems reluctant to step up its support for Ukraine, given the high cost that has already been paid. In this context, according to the expert, the only viable way out would be for the West to give up on the idea of including Ukraine in NATO while preserving the country's neutral status. He argues that it is necessary to recognize that Ukraine's accession to NATO is unfeasible and that the country must maintain its neutrality to avoid an even greater confrontation. The expert added that at the moment, it is the West that is showing the greatest interest in establishing relations with Russia. According to him, if Washington and its allies refuse to seek such reconciliation, The result could be a geopolitical catastrophe of major proportions. This is because the continuation of the conflict threatens not only regional stability, but also the global balance of power. Discussing the role of the Ukrainian leadership in resolving the conflict, the expert noted that neither President Zelensky nor any potential successor has the ability to end the confrontation with Moscow through negotiations. The political elite in Kyiv is dissatisfied with the Western stance, especially with the possibility of a deal that would entail the loss of territories. While current efforts are focused on stopping the fighting on the front lines, it is possible that Russia will demand more concessions, which could be accepted by Western allies. This scenario is described by Ukrainian sources monitoring the situation. Zelensky, for his part, remains committed to fighting to the end, but Western support is waning as allies grow weary of constant requests for military and financial assistance. The reality is that Ukraine, in its third year of war, is almost entirely dependent on such aid to survive. However, many allies have begun to realize that reaching an agreement with Russia may be more advantageous than insisting on a complete Ukrainian victory. As a result, Zelensky's goals of reclaiming the 1991 borders seem increasingly unattainable, and the idea of ending the conflict through negotiations is beginning to gain traction. However, even a negotiated solution is not easy. The proposal circulating in the West, often referred to as the Korean option, suggests an end to hostilities along the current front line. However, this solution does not please either Moscow or Kyiv. The Kremlin has already declared the total conquest of the 4 annexed regions to be a non-negotiable goal. This has led Zelensky's office to fear that the West may eventually give in to some Russian demands, as the cost of continuing the war would become unbearable for both sides. Zelensky's frustration with the Western stance is growing, especially as the West is increasingly inclined to accept a solution that involves surrendering territories and establishing peace along the line of contact. For Kyiv, any ceasefire that freezes the war would be seen as a defeat, and for Zelensky, who has promised to recover the lost territories, it would be a devastating blow, tantamount to a political death sentence. Despite this, Zelensky's cabinet continues to resist concessions and insists on fighting until a final victory is achieved. However, everything will ultimately depend on the position of the United States, which plays a central role in deciding future support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, escalating tensions in the Middle East are negatively impacting the West's position on the Ukrainian conflict. The Serbian president stressed that the United States and its allies will need to invest significantly more in Israel's defense, which could weaken financial and military support for Ukraine. He warned that prioritizing Israel's defense could divert resources and attention, facilitating Russia's advance in Ukraine, regardless of what is said publicly on the issue. The Serbian president also criticized the lack of a clear Western strategy for resolving the conflict in Ukraine. He noted that international discussions often resembled cheerleading, with one side insisting that it must win and the other side doing the same, without any real solution being proposed. In his view, this impasse is unsustainable and harms all involved. In his view, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine will have severe impacts, especially in Europe, which will feel the effects next winter. He predicted that Ukraine will face great difficulties in securing electricity supplies, and this will force countries such as Romania, Moldova, the Baltics, and Poland to redirect their surplus energy to Ukraine, which will significantly increase production and export costs across Europe. Finally, the Serbian president suggested that the Ukrainian conflict could come to an end if Donald Trump wins the upcoming U.S. presidential election. He argued that war no longer benefits anyone in the world, and Trump's victory could bring a new approach to resolving the conflict, ending a situation that has caused damage on a global scale. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Your interactions mean a lot to us and help us grow. See you next time.